All right, so it does certainly feel like that this moment in history for Tesla is a big one. Just a few hours ago, Elon posted on X saying that every half decade or so, Tesla has to do a complete organizational overhaul to reach the next level. That said, our executive tenure is unusually high at well over 10 years at Tesla. So he's obviously referring to the more than 10% layoffs that happened and it was announced yesterday, and that Drew Baglino and Rohan Patel they also quit. So everybody's wondering why the two of them decided to quit at the same time that the layoffs happened. And even Rohan was apparently interviewed or communicated with TechCrunch, and he said something like, massive changes happening in the company. So, the perception that people have is that, Elon is saying that he wants to go all in on the robotaxi approach, perhaps postponing the compact car. Let's start with you, Alexandra, because I know that you did a post recently saying that, when people are saying right now that Tesla's going all in on robotaxi, you don't think that that's exactly what's happening. But also, if you can also comment on this, is this a big moment in Tesla's history? Is this one of those scenarios where he's really repositioning the company again to become much more of an AI robotaxi subscription model and completely to get to that next level? What do you think about all that?
Yeah, great to be back in this space. Thanks a lot, Herbert. Of course, it's a big moment, but it's one big moment out of many. We've had lots of these moments over time. For me, who joined this bandwagon only in 2020, I did a lot of homework going back into the earlier years and listening to these autonomy days and battery days and reaction zen and whatever. And it always reminds me that there is some drama to the Tesla stock. There's no doubt about it. So in my view, this is crucial, but it's not unexpected. Everybody that's sitting and here and listening to us, knows that Elon has for months and short years positioned Tesla as an AI company. So what is happening at the moment should not be surprising. And my post this morning was, robotaxi is one of the products. FSD is another one. Obviously, they're very close to each other, but there are two different service lines. And there are two other ones that are just as big, which is energy, for which we already have clear assumptions how that is growing, and the bots being a huge market. So when people try to traumatize at the moment that he's throwing everything at robotaxi, of course, robotaxi is and always has been a priority, but it's not as if there is nothing else, right? I just want to calm everybody down that we're not just, this is not a moment where Tesla stops producing cars or only produces robotaxi now, so it doesn't look at the bots anymore, it doesn't look at the energy market. Of course they do. So just, take a breath, it's all good. Now, this story last week, it's already a week ago, right? I mean, it's just everything seems crazy. Time is something in Tesla's world. So it was 10 days ago on that Friday when that presumably wrong Reuters article came out. So I think in hindsight, we can actually understand what happened there. Reuters must have gotten some actually valid information, but exaggerated it completely into there is no Model 2 or whatever you want to call the compact car ever going to come anymore. That's crap. That's never going to happen. That's just not true. That is just not true. The priority may have shifted from a current setup where the Model 2 was supposed to have its initial production line in Austin, and that production line should then have been shifted to Mexico. We don't know what happens on that, and I expect that Elon next week, Tuesday, because it's in 1 week that we have the earnings call, is going to address that, because there's obviously a delay there. There's something that happened that, and I'll give you my theory in a second. But it's not scrapped, it's not gone. It's not gone, and I think the reason why it's not gone is because progress with FSD has been so exponential. Remember when we saw first Elon using this version that was based on neural nets, I think it was second half of August last year when he was driving through the suburbs in Silicon Valley, and and him was himself, completely blown away about the progress. And since then, in only 8 months, this is now in all FSD ready cars except for mine, because I'm on one branch that's not yet served, but other than that, 90% of those that can have the FSD have now the option to try it out for a month. So that was a very compact and rapid evolution, and where he first and foremost saw at what speed the iterations became better and quicker and gave him the confidence needed. And then, those are those moments, and you can see them in Apple's history, you can see them in some other histories, where you have to ask yourself, are you going to stay now with your pre-planned plan that, first the compact car, then FSD, whatever, or seeing the margins and seeing the potential and seeing that here Tesla is the world leader by far. They're not the world leader by building compact cars, compact electric cars. There are 10 other or 15 or 20 other car manufacturers out there that can build cars. They're not of Tesla standard, but it's a crowded field in that thing. While on the other hand, with FSD and the robotaxi business model, they have a moat, they have an advantage. And having learned, and I'm sure they have learned a lot about, how quickly their intellectual property has been stolen, has been used, not only in China, also in other places. I think it became a very evident decision to say, okay, we're ready, and we're going to present to the market sooner or later a car. I'm not of those that are absolutely convinced we're going to see a car on August 8th, but good if we do, but it doesn't really matter to me. But what's more important to me is the business model they want to roll out. And so those decisions are hard. When you are an entrepreneur, when you are the head of 140,000 employees, when you suddenly shift from something that, was sort of, it was planned, it was laid out, it was explained in multiple earnings calls and other occasions, and then you turn the switch and you prioritize something else. Those are difficult decisions, and they're difficult decisions that will not make everybody happy. I don't think that neither Drew or Rohan left because of that decision. I just think time has come. I have my personal opinion. It doesn't matter at all what I think on that, why they both left. But it's obviously very painful for the 10% or whatever cut it is going to be. I mean, all those numbers you hear from Germany are completely exaggerated. German press is always very happy to run with the wrong numbers. But anyway, it is too much. Some of those people have been with Tesla for only short months. It's always painful when you lose your job. But on the other hand, it's also, we have to just acknowledge, it's also great to have Tesla's name on your resume when you're job hunting again. So I obviously feel for these people, but that's the tough American labor law market. So and we'll see how they will proceed in non-American ways in Shanghai and in Berlin. So anyway, all this to sum up, no, he's not throwing the house only at robotaxi, but it is obviously the newest priority, so there will be the focus on that one. But the other things are there as well. I'm looking forward to get some news on the bot. We're going to have obviously the earnings in a week, and we'll see how energy is evolving. So there are lots of other things to come.
Thank you, Alexandra. So the two parts I want to focus on is the first part, that this is, a certain moment in history that's important. And the second one is that it's wartime for Elon and for Tesla. So the first part was, yesterday, in all the communications that Elon's emailed to the staff, every time he said something, he was referring to the need to reorganize and streamline the company for the next phase of growth. That was a term that was used over and over: streamline, reorganize the company for the next phase of growth. But today, he talked about every half decade or so, Tesla has to do a complete organizational overhaul to reach the next level. And then yesterday, as many of you reported, Elon changed his profile on X to be the Walter Isaacson biography photo of him with his hands held together and the word auto over on top of his hands. And this person, Christopher Stanley, said, "Hey, there's no hidden meaning here. When you just edit using Apple iPhone, the word auto will appear at the bottom." And he goes, "Don't try to go and do conspiracy theory or anything like that." But Elon replied back and said, "I left it there on purpose." So the word auto is something that he wanted people to see. Is that meaning that he's now focused on autonomy? That this is, maybe we were talking, wouldn't it be great if he just called it auto, right? I'm going to hail myself an auto. Chris Jang then wrote a tweet saying Elon re-enters wartime CEO mode. The scene is familiar to the veterans of the Tesla community. Elon decided to bet the entire company on robotaxi. I don't know if all in robotaxi is right or wrong. I don't have the answer. This is what Chris Jang tweeted. Elon liked that tweet. Now, I'm not sure if he's referring to all in a robotaxi or that it's a wartime CEO scenario. And of course, the wartime CEO, there's a book written by Ben Horowitz of A16Z, an investor firm, and he talked about the difference between a wartime CEO and a peacetime CEO. And we've seen Elon. He was a wartime CEO when he took over X, about to fail, about to go bankrupt. He turned it around. Here, he wants to focus big time on robotaxi. He called 8/8 to be the day that they're going to unveil it. He had a massive layoff. But again, I mean, Sawyer's here. He reported that this is not necessarily new. Tesla has gone through many periods where they've laid off people, 9% at one point, 1 year. So let's since you're here, Sawyer, go ahead and just give an update on what you're thinking about this. Is this more than just a paring down in the normal workforce? Is this a big change? Is this a big important day for Tesla?
Well, I will say I think it's more than just trimming the fat. The difference with this layoff, and yes, Tesla's done other layoffs, and the 10% number wasn't surprising to me. I actually was surprised that they waited this long to lay off anybody with all those cuts happening in late 2022 and all the way through 2023 at other companies. But when those 7 and 9% cuts happened in 2018, 2019, the company was still growing, but they were having issues with cash and obviously profitability. So back then, it really felt like trimming the fat so they could achieve profitability. It's a little bit different this time with growth slowing. It more feels like to me that they want to become more efficient in their structural organization and sort of refocus efforts. And I think there are certain programs that maybe haven't performed as well as Elon has wanted them to, 4680s being one of them. There were clearly various executives, including Drew and a few others, that were either laid off or left yesterday or 2 days ago, and now I guess. So I think this is Elon. And as far as the robotaxi, clearly the affordable car was a priority as soon as late last year. So something happened between now and then where Elon was like, I'd rather go after the robotaxi first. And this doesn't mean that the next gen, affordable car is canceled. They're supposedly supposed to be on the same platform. So assumingly they could just throw steering wheel and pedals, and I know it's a little bit more complicated than that, but they could do that at some point. But I think Elon saw the performance of FSD 12 and the end-to-end model and became really bullish and said, why not just do a robotaxi now? Let's be early on this thing rather than late. And I saw what was the headline today from someone? Someone said Tesla wants to pivot to robotaxis. This was always the plan. I mean, as Alexandra said in that 2019, I think it was 2019, right, Alexandra, that Autonomy Day
Yes.
presentation. This has been the plan for many years, and the cornerstone of my 2018 all-in Tesla investment was robotaxis. So I think Tesla investors are going to need to buckle up for a bumpy road ahead, but they also need to figure out, why are you in the stock? Are you in the stock just for short-term results and only for Cybertruck profits or affordable car profits, or are you in it more for the long-term potential of AI and robotaxis? Because I suspect that's why most long-term investors got into the stock if they did get into it years ago. So I think it's probably Q1 results probably aren't going to be good. Typically, when stuff like this happens right before the Q1 print or any print, it's not good. But I think if you're bullish on robotaxis, you could arguably take away what's happened as a bullish signal on that. But that doesn't mean there aren't some issues going on within the company that need to be addressed. And it looks like Elon is taking the steps to do just that.
Any comments on Elon at wartime and what he's like and what you're expecting?
Uh, I mean, I think Elon is like, we need to fix some of these lacking programs, maybe have some fresh blood leading them. And I don't want to read too much into it, to be honest, because I know Elon, and I've spoken to various people at Tesla over recent months. Like, he's very much involved at Tesla. He does meetings every week with people, like he always has. I think there's this feeling that because he tweets a lot, like he's not working at Tesla, but he is. But I think he's just going to refocus certain efforts, uh, reorganize in some other areas. And we'll see. I really hope he lays out his vision for the coming years on the Q1 call. I think investors need that. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and investors shouldn't need hold handing, and I don't want Elon to do that. But he should lay out a clear vision and some of the reasoning behind some of these big changes lately.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Drew will be missed at that call. I mean, I'm always overanalyzing these calls, and Drew had a very pertinent and clear voice when it came to explain, where they were in the 4680 ramp or in whatever. He always, in few phrases, explained the situation very well. So that's going to be missed. We're just going to have to manage our expectations for that call, because it may be, well, an Elon quite confusing call. He will address everything, but in his manner. So I'm not sure Wall Street will like it, because they don't like the rumbling and rumbling. But I think we should just prepare ourselves to have the time to overanalyze and read and clearly see where he wants to carry that discussion. Because there are so many nuggets always in his speech, in his answers. It is obviously not laid out in a PowerPoint-friendly Wall Street way, but I agree with you, Sawyer. It's going to be a major call where people should take the patience to listen. I always try to publish all the screenshots that I find important, and that so people can reread them. There will be a lot happening next Tuesday. There is no doubt in my mind.
Let's have Nick join up.
Yeah, there's specific thing you want to talk about, Herbert?
I mean, yeah, if you want to address the organizational change, why are they doing this? Because it certainly looks like it is his liking the post about wartime CEO, and any topic you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, I think everybody's kind of getting a little dramatic about all of this. This is nothing new. You would have thought that Elon just quit or left the way everybody's reacting. I mean, Jeff Bezos left and Amazon's all-time highs. Steve Jobs left and Apple just ripped away. Andre Karpathy left and FSD 12 comes out. JD leaves and Drew Baglino rises. I mean, this is normal. Elon's still there. At the end of the day, Elon's what makes everything happen. And if anything, Sawyer's saying that he's heard that Elon's still in the meetings and everything. Elon communicates that to us. But if anything, for all the people who want to see more of Elon, well, here you go. Here's going to be a lot more of Elon. He's changing the sales process. He's getting in there. He's rifting people, doing what he has to do. And I think, is this a memorable time period moment in history? Yeah, but not because Drew left, not because the cuts, not because sales are down, not because this quarter is probably going to be a brutal one. And ironically, I bet you it's green the next day, just because we haven't had a green day after earnings in forever, and we're going into this in a brutal way. But it's going to be memorable because this is probably the beginning of actually getting to autonomy. And there's a reason why Elon is just gung ho about this now, because he sees something. And what he sees is probably something that we won't see for quite some time, right? The builds that we're driving now have been QA'd and tested long before, right? These builds have been ready to go for quite some time. So what they see are alpha builds that we probably will never see. And they're seeing some serious results. I mean, just look at a lot of Ashok's comments, look at the other Tesla AI engineers' comments. And so I think if this is a memorable moment, it's that. This is when people didn't, believe other technologies were on the precipice of coming out, but everybody else kind of sees it and experiences it. So yeah, it's a monumental moment for that. But all this other overreaction is just it's frankly very overblown. I mean, the stocks can do what the stock does. And yeah, sales are down. Yeah, that's going to happen. We are arguably, in my opinion, we've been somewhat of a recession for a long, long time. Kathy Woods calls it a rolling recession, but I mean, over the weekend, we had, almost another war in the Middle East. Then we didn't. Now we might again. We've got all kinds of mess going on with China and Taiwan. We're dealing with Ukraine. I mean, the world's not in a good place in general. The Fed doesn't know what's going on. So this isn't just a Elon thing. This is not just a Tesla isolated thing. And people need to zoom out and really look at the bigger picture of what's going on. The bigger picture is that revolutions happening before our eyes with FSD 12 and what's happening here, and we get to be part of it. So enjoy it. Don't get upset about every little thing, every little change, because frankly, all the change that all these companies have listed have led to better and bigger things for the company.
Wow, thank you so much, Nicholas. That was fantastic. So I'm going to ask a question that maybe everyone in the panel can answer. We'll start with you, Matthew. There seems to be a divide, maybe, I guess, obviously between the institutional analysts who are warning and saying this bet on robotaxi is too soon. You're you're not gonna have that second growth wave of a compact car, and so you're gonna get caught in the next several years if robotaxi takes a lot longer than you think. Do you think that this is a bet the company on that scenario, or do you think that, as Nicholas was saying, that there's enough signals and signs that they might have? Start with you, Matthew.
Yeah, so I'm more bullish about robotaxi than I've ever been. I've been on the robotaxi train essentially since the Cybertruck unveil happened. When the Cybertruck unveil happened, I actually reserved about 24 Cybertrucks because my plan was, hey, I'm going to operate my own little fleet of robotaxis. So I've been looking forward to this software now for over half a decade. And since I got FSD 12, I finally feel like we're getting very close. I think Tesla, the team at Tesla knows that they're close. Obviously, Elon is extremely bullish on it. I think that might have frustrated some of the other executives. In Walter Isaacson's book, Franz said that he used to meet with Elon every Friday, and now he doesn't, and sometimes it's hard to even meet with him. Franz and Lars both said they essentially designed the next gen non-robotaxi, the small compact car, behind Elon's back, and then showed it to him. I'm guessing a lot of people on Drew's team were laid off because they were the ones that were working on this vehicle that's now going to be postponed for who knows how long. That's probably not very delightful experience for Drew when he's told on Sunday that he's got to lay off a huge chunk of his team. So Elon wouldn't be doing this if he didn't think autonomy is right around the corner. Robotaxi will essentially be a license to print unlimited money. Every time you build a vehicle, you can probably pay for it in about 3 or 4 months, and then it's running, almost all, maximum margin for the next several years until the vehicle's worn out. So I think robotaxi is coming. Elon announced, gave the date of the event after the Reuters report came out saying they were canceling the Model 2. I imagine he was planning on that unveil sometime this year, but he probably didn't necessarily want to either announce the unveil or maybe didn't even have the date in mind until that article came out, and he kind of had to react to it. Again, in Walter Isaacson's book, that's kind of what happened with the Cybertruck. Elon said, okay, we're going to unveil this in 6 months, and it wasn't really ready to unveil. So possibly what's happening here with the robotaxi event, but this is definitely bet the company type of move. Personally, I'm very bullish about it. I'm considering, selling a lot of my other stock and other equities and making a big buy of Tesla in the next couple of weeks, because I think the earnings call is going to be a bit of a nightmare. Analysts use predictions and numbers to come up with the price targets, and there's essentially zero zero EPS given to robotaxis, and Elon is not going to come out and say our first robotaxis are going to be running by the end of the year, and next year we're going to be generating X hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue from this business. So it's going to be kind of a bloodbath, because Elon's probably going to say there'll be flat or negative growth on deliveries, and robotaxis will come soon. So if that happens, I'll probably make a huge buy in Tesla at that point.
Okay, great answer, Matthew. I'm going to ask. I'll keep asking the same question now, but later I'll explain 3 different scenarios of what can happen, and we'll get your opinion on that. But Alexandra, what's your thought? Are you ready to? Or you think this is the right decision to go all in on robotaxi at this point? I know you don't like the word all in, but I mean prioritizing it right now and deprioritizing everything.
Yes, I do, because like I explained earlier, I'm looking forward to the compact car. I want one. I think that's a cute idea, and I prefer Tesla over anything else. And I want to stay in that ecosystem, and I want to have a full self-driving car. But the mode of Tesla, once it's ready, is the robotaxi, is FSD, and once you come to the conviction level that you're ready, you have to prioritize it, because everybody else is not. There's some, you've explained it very well with that chart you showed the other day. There are some initiatives in China, in Israel, in Europe, but Tesla is by far the leader and has the most robust solution. And so once you have that, I understand it's not an easy decision, but do you want to just continue how planned, or would you just, steer the boat in the direction where you have, if this goes the right way, you have such an advance to everybody else that it has to be done. Again, I know that people hate change, and this may be, is it really so unexpected? No, we know for 5 years that we've been working to that point. But and funnily enough, the same people that now scream, "Oh my God, they're doing that, they're not doing the other thing," for 5 years were going, "Oh my God, he's late." The same people, the same, right? So choose your camp. But the once you have the comfort level needed, the decision actually imposed itself. It's not something you could just sit on and think over and tell yourself, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable with doing it." When you get to that comfort level, you have to execute.
Yeah, I think there's going to be ways of mitigating this. But Alexander, are you okay if, let's say, robotaxi takes 3 years and compact car is not in development, won't be launched 2 years from now, 1 year from now?
That's pure speculation. It's not going to take 3 years. You don't think that Elon's going to announce first of all, we have a production line that was ready or was getting ready for compact car in Austin, right? So this may be currently paused, but it's not dismantled, or it's not completely abandoned, or I don't know how you want to call it. So that's just a fact. So they're concentrating currently the efforts on the robotaxi, which comes with a lot of subtitles, business plan, what happens to the current Tesla fleet in the hands of owners that want to participate, what happens to the current Tesla fleet of used cars. Remember, 2 or 3 years ago, we were assuming that all the lease returns of 3s and Ys would become part of a Tesla fleet. Right, that didn't happen. They sold many. There's COVID. There was lots of other reasons, but now that may become a topic again. Will they build up with the current inventory a Tesla fleet? And then obviously there is the new car, the robotaxi, the car without steering wheel that is just designed for people to sit in it like in a cabin and get chauffeured without any intervention to the destination. So first of all, it's not going to take 3 years, but there are intermediary states that are immediately applicable once the decision is taken and regulators are on board.
Okay, and Sawyer, what's your thoughts on that? Some people, like the institutional analysts, think that robotaxi, going all in on robotaxi is the wrong move. Instead, should have done compact car. What's your reaction?
Well, I'll just add that institutional investors in Wall Street have always had a hard time understanding Tesla's robotaxi vision and FSD's performance. So am I surprised that they're having a hard time understanding these latest moves? No. But having said that, Elon still needs to lay out the vision, I think, for everybody on the Q1 call, just to reassure where we're at, where he's at, and sort of what his thought process is in the months and years to come.
Okay, I'm going to lay out 3 scenarios. Oh, sorry, Nicholas, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I just want to add, just a little history lesson. And it's real quick. It's, we often reference companies like Apple to what Tesla is doing, but a lot of times these visionary founders, they see something and they pivot immediately. And we can look at the iPhone. I don't know how many people know this. I'm sure, Herbert, you do, but the iPad was actually being designed before the iPhone was. And then Steve Jobs, once they had the scroll function working on a screen, he shelved the iPad idea because he said, we have to do a phone. And we don't know what happened, but it definitely seems like Elon had a similar moment as FSD12 and the end-to-end start to progress. And he said, okay, stop. We need to double down on this. This has to be our priority. And we need to narrow in on this. And so, I don't know. I just, again, we don't know what we don't know. And everybody's getting so bent sideways because of Reuters article and what may or may not be. But for all we know, all they're doing is bringing forward robotaxis, autonomy, and eventually going to do the next, gen vehicle that will have everything else. But if you really think about it, what makes more sense? To lead with a project and a product that can be very high gross margins and recurring revenue, or to do a one-time point of sale to more challenged economic people in third world countries? What's the smarter play in general? I mean, forget what the products are. If you were to ask any, institutional investors, what would be the answer there? I think it'd be very clearly the high margin recurring revenue. Now, whether they believe it's going to happen or not, well, that's up to them, and really it's not their choice. It's on the founder and CEO, Elon Musk. And, up to this point, listening and believing what he sees is going to pan out has worked out. So, anyways, just to tie it back to something that's more tangible that really didn't happen that long ago with Apple, where a very, very similar thing happened, but there's obviously less media and social media and all that background.
Wow, I really love that. That's a great, great, great example. So I'm going to list out 4 scenarios because initially, of course, the part that everybody's very scared about is that if robotaxi is not a complete failure, but takes a lot longer than you think about, what would happen then? And I think there are a number of contingency plans that could actually kind of take care of that. So one scenario is robotaxi it takes a lot longer than we think, right? 3 years from now before it actually gets any kind of revenue at all. What happens now? Scenario 2 is robotaxi is very successful and it succeeds beyond our wildest dreams. And within a year, 2 years from now, it's already generating significant revenue. It's showing the path forward. Scenario 3 could be that maybe they just, as contingency, before robotaxi happens, maybe they can just lower the price of the Model 3, cut that price even further so that it grows its market. It's not this stagnant, it's already hit its mark and it can't grow much further. What if they dramatically cut the price of the Model 3? And then scenario 4 is something that, Alexandra, as you and I have been talking about it, you brought this to my mind, which is what I think you've been saying all along, and it just took me a while to catch on to it, is what if FSD continues to improve so well, even before robotaxis launched, wouldn't FSD increase the sales of the Model 3 and Model Y so that it gets closer to the 50% growth again, because everybody will want to buy a Tesla. Everybody will want to buy a Tesla because it is the only one that's shown that it can actually turn into a robotaxi. They might need to show that there is some Teslas out there that are being used for robotaxi, and then the light bulb will go off for everyone else. But those things can happen. So that's maybe people can address that question. Who wants to go first and answer any of those scenarios, or which of those scenarios you want to dive deeper into? You go ahead, Machine.
Hi, thanks for having me. I think my opinion on FSD has kind of been pretty stable over, I would say, 7 years, that I've been kind of conservative on estimating when it's going to be useful as a robotaxi service versus usefulness as an L2 assist. And even going back to 2017, when the software on hardware 2.5 was very primitive, looking at downsampling images. It wasn't even taking the full resolution of the images and just comparing a few of them. And I was like, oh, this is nowhere near going to be available for FSD. And move it to now, where we're going end to end, and we have a large amount of compute, a large amount of data, efficiently curated data, I may add, and more efficient compute chips, inference chips on the cars. Tesla's in a much better position along that pathway. I would say that first. But second, I would say, having studied a lot of the literature on how these large transformer-based models learn and how their error rates go down over time with respect to compute and data, I'm still hesitant to be super bullish on a short-term time frame that this is going to be solved in let's say a year. It may take an undetermined number of years still to get it to robotaxi level, let's say nationwide, where the error rates would still have to come down, let's say 30x to 100x from the current levels. And that's something that's just hard for any machine learning engineer to be able to predict out exactly when that's going to happen. So that my base case is Tesla will solve this problem, but it's hard to discount backwards from when that's going to happen. So I just hope that the company has a contingency plan for utilizing the current vehicles, or if they're going to produce a next gen vehicle as a consumer car, so that they continue growing their earnings. I don't care per se if they grow the production. I care about growing earnings. And they just need to make sure they have a plan for that, because I wouldn't assume that robotaxi software will be solved in say 1 to 2 years. Like, it's possible. Anything's possible, but there's a lot of limits with compute and data, and the inference compute may need to grow significantly to support a model that's high enough resolution to do robotaxi. So it's just kind of interesting, because I'm actually more bullish on Optimus, because it doesn't even have to deal with this sort of the high accuracy that robotaxi does. I still think Optimus is going to be a superior play in like 2 years.
So Machine, you're expecting that on 8/8, when he unveils robotaxi, that you don't think he's going to be announcing any kind of robotaxi program for a couple of years from now?
I mean, look, he could announce something that uses customers behind the driving wheel still, right? As it's like supervised, like it's called now supervised FSD. Like, you could do a taxi service like that. That's totally possible. And it's possible that they have certain geographic areas at which it performs better. You know, if you have very clear, well laid out suburbs, like Waymo does in Phoenix, where all the signs are very clear and there's no weird intersections, and they have data that shows that the critical disengagement rate is low enough already, or gets low enough, that maybe that's possible to start some places. Like, I do believe certain places, certain suburbs could start earlier.
Okay, and then
possible.
if they did that, even if just a small location, would that not increase the sales of Model 3s and Model Ys once people actually realize that Teslas can become a robotaxi in several years?
I think it's possible. It's hard to speculate beyond the, super tech enthusiasts, which a lot of those people are in the space, right, who've already bought into the FSD program. We're talking more about, the next sort of level or threshold of consumers, who I definitely think would pay some money for the L2 version, right, which now is $99 per month. I definitely think more people will subscribe to that over time. But will people start buying the vehicles because they think they can use it as a robotaxi like that? I'm not. Yeah, that's less. I'm less sure on. Like, I'm not. I don't have a strong opinion either way.
That sounds good. So Sawyer, Matthew, Nick, Alexander, do you guys have question on the 4 scenarios I presented?
I'll just say I think Tesla investors should continue to assume that robotaxis will take longer than we all would like it to. These sort of things always take longer than Elon says they typically will. I still think it'll happen, and the FSD 12 progress has been pretty mind blowing. But I think we're still a ways away. We'll see what Tesla or Elon has to unveil on August 8th. But I still think it's a ways away.
Right. And so that's why I'm saying, assuming that that's the case, what are the contingency plan? Because if it's true that they've delayed the compact car, then this is what I'm coming up with. Well, you might see increased sales of Model 3, Model Y. They might cut the price of Model 3. They might.
Yeah. So here's what I think. I don't think you can drop the price of the Model 3 too much, because I think they've already hit the level of COGS decline that they can reach, right? There's not much lower they can go. And I know the Model 3 doesn't use giga castings yet, and maybe they could throw those in there and reduce costs a little bit, but you can't get down to the $25,000 mark that the rumored affordable car was supposed to reach. So I don't know. I have no clue if this rumor is true about the affordable car being delayed or canceled. If it is delayed, I think that's a mistake. I personally feel like they should be going all in on that, because the market opportunity is incredible. It would expand Tesla's earnings quite a bit. There's so many people that still have no clue how incredible Tesla's vehicles are. But when you enter a market of that price point, it really opens people's eyes, and it brings in a lot of new buyers. And 90% of Tesla buyers last year were like first time buyers or incomers to the brand. So a next gen vehicle would even ramp that up further. And if they're on the same platform, I don't see much risk in just doing at least both at the same time. Certainly.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Do you think that it's possible that they would have robotaxi being built in Giga Texas, but in another Giga factory, in that region where they're not expecting to roll out robotaxi for a while, they'll go ahead and build a compact car there?
That could be the strategy, because obviously FSD is only launched really in the US and Canada. And even if a robotaxi is like relatively soon, I don't know if it'll launch in China or other parts of Europe anytime soon, because those countries have their own challenges with self-driving, right? So yeah, I hope Elon will be on their Q1 earnings call next week and say, no, this affordable car is still on track, or we're still doing it. But I suspect he's probably delayed it in favor of the robotaxi, but we'll see.
Okay, Tesla Ted.
Hey guys, been a while. So on the topic of robotaxi, I think they're actually one and the same, and I say this because steer by wire, 48 volt architecture, all this is actually super important. And the one thing that people forget is they're moving to an unboxed process, and also not just manufacturing localization, but also design localization. So I want you to keep that in mind. And also with robotaxi and steer by wire, the one thing that a lot of investors don't, well, institutional investors in Wall Street, et cetera, they focus on one thing, but the key to understanding Tesla is really understanding the way the company operates, number one, understanding cars, number two, and understanding tech. So when you think about the robotaxi, think about like basically race cars with the removable steering wheel. The column's there and it's fixed, but of course there's no drive-by-wire. When we think about robotaxi as a platform that can be applied to multiple countries and continents, you just take the wheel or the squircle and you can pop it on, right? So that's where steer by wire kind of comes in, and the whole localization of things. Like the exterior design could be vastly different, but the interior template could actually be very similar or the same. And before I hop off here, I want to say that the layoffs are being greatly exaggerated, and I didn't get to comment on this before, but I saw it coming in January when I looked at the retail stores, and there was a sense of kind of complacency. And I know Elon and Tom, they generally don't like this when the level of salesmanship is kind of gone, or was gone, or that's what I saw. And I knew the second they did their performance evaluations, this was going to be the buildup to slashing the workforce. And it's not just the people who are actually complacent, but it's also for the people that are middle managers or even top managers now. It's like it's a human thing for certain levels of comfort to creep in. And Tesla's a hardcore company, and every time these layoffs happen, everybody has to rally. And it would be a silly thing to say that the board members and Tesla employees don't care about the stock price. They absolutely do. Yeah.
Go ahead, Machine.
Yeah, I have a couple comments. First, just to address what Tesla Ted said. Knowing employees at Tesla fully agree that they do care about the stock price. There's morale is affected by stock price, especially if it's been stagnant for a few years. And my main concern right now is that the communication over this plan has to become very clear for institutional investors. Otherwise, they will absolutely reduce risk against the company. And so what I mean is this plan for going to robotaxis for institutional investors who are very risk averse, they need to see a very clear path and plan for understanding how Tesla will achieve the software capability for robotaxis. And even I, as someone who does machine learning and has a pretty good technical understanding of what they're doing and what their resources are, I don't know exactly how they're going to get there and what time frame. So Tesla, the CEO, really needs to lay out a clear plan. How much compute do they need? How much data are they going to need? What is their projected drop in error rate? These may seem like insane details to give to investors, I guess, but when you're essentially moving toward leveraging and betting most of the company's future expected returns on robotaxis, this is information that investors are going to need, or they're going to sell out. I just see that's a big risk for the company. What I'm saying is, in terms of the short term, like long term, it doesn't matter, but short term, you may get a big sell off if that information isn't communicated, and then you have another problem with employees and morale if the share price goes down further.
Okay. Hey, welcome, Jeff. You missed the first part, which is we're just talking about the massive reorganization that Elon just posted a few hours ago, talking about a big reorg, and then what's happening, and then this idea that he liked a post about talking about becoming a wartime CEO mode.
Yeah. Any crying? Did I miss any crying or any big arguments prior?
Not yet. Not yet.
No tears.
Let's go.
Okay. Yeah.
Not yet.
An emotional topic. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've been through these before. It's funny. At Motorola, we launched the biggest phone ever, Razr, and then in 2004. And then for every year for 10 years, I cut between 10 and 30% of the organization. It was terrible. And but you had to do that. And there's all this Korean competition coming in, China competition coming in. At the same time, the whole thing flipped on its head. And it was, we're not doing dumb phones anymore. We're going to do smartphones. And so then we scrapped our entire portfolio and went to smartphone, and we made the top Android phone, the Droid series, the first out of the gate. It was selling before there's any Samsung Galaxy or anything. Things are going, pretty good. And but we're still in the mode of cutting all the way up until when I left that business in 2017. It's kind of similar to what was happening here. I was asked for a 30% reduction of my team, and I said, "Well, I think it's high time." When I looked at the situation, and I looked at like our portfolio, we weren't really innovating, and I was kind of an inventor of like more of kind of in the technical and in mode of like doing new things in mobile, and we weren't doing much. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's time for me. And I can kind of feel and relate to some of the conversations and what's happening with some of the Tesla leadership as well. There's always a time where you kind of have to like reflect on, what's going on with the business, what are things changing, what does it mean for you, how do you fit in? And it looks like Tesla is rapidly converting into a new company. And it started with Elon's decisions on capital expenditure and going all in on these H100s and building out the network infrastructure. And that has ramifications. If you're going to spend that kind of capital, you don't just sit there and like spend it and like hope it comes up. You have to, get the AI resources around it. And then you're like, okay, well, where's my sources of revenue going to come from? 97% of them been coming from metal and shipping, cars. And that's going to change. They've seen Tesla's forecasted this slowdown, I think, well in advance. They did their price reductions early to get EVs to be competitive. I think this whole take that this was the wrong thing to do from day one, and Tesla should be still shipping $60,000 Model Ys, I think is kind of a ridiculous take. That would have never worked. The question is like, you can always Monday morning quarterback and say they should have done more of this and less of this or whatever, but largely what they've done is they've created, basically they've created the EV ecosystem from charging the number one selling vehicle and so forth. So now it's like, where do you go from here? And that's the debate. And the debate is, are they building a car platform? The next generation, is it a car platform that will spit out multiple vehicle types? Or is it all in robotaxi? And I don't think it's the latter. I think from a software perspective, and I think from a network infrastructure perspective, it's the latter. But I think they're designing they're changing how cars are developed again. Like they're springboarding off of what they already changed the industry themselves before, and now they're changing it again. They're going to change how cars are developed, and they're going to change how they're manufactured in the factory, and the two fit together. And they both enable something called late stage postponement. And it's this modularity that they're going to both in the factory and in their approach to design, where I believe that they're working on a platform that will produce multiple vehicle types. And again, it's not going to be like a perfect, like, Willy Wonka type situation, but it is going to be a platform, and it is going to give them that modularity and that flexibility to be able to do some late stage decisions, I think. So I believe they're going to enable both vehicle types. I'll pause there for some questions or commentary.
Yeah. Nicholas, did you have your hands up?
Yeah, I was just gonna reply back to what Machine was saying before. I don't know what's gonna be said or not said on the earnings call, but I can almost guarantee you that you are not going to get any product announcements. You're not going to get any product vision. You're not going to get timelines. Elon will push back, say this is not the venue for product announcements or unveils or anything. We'll talk about that on the 8/8. He'll probably talk about it's a stressed economy, high interest rates. I mean, you're probably going to get more of the same. And I feel like going to every quarter, everybody's got the hopium, injected pretty high, hoping that that's what we get, and we get some type of vision, whatever. And ever since then, you've seen, Ross Gerber go by the wayside, Gary Black go by the wayside, right, as far as prominent names. But I would, if that's what you're hoping for, I would definitely temper expectations. And if you think the stock's going to crash, I would expect the stock to crash, because that, I would be so shocked if that's what happens. That would be so against what Elon is about. And if anything, I would think he'd point more towards 8/8 and just be ready. Just get ready. We'll talk about it then.
Yeah, see, I completely agree with everything you just said, Nicholas. The whole thing about wartime CEO and the massive reorganization that the company is going through, he's going to emphasize that, right? He likes to position himself and the company as this underdog about to do big, because that's how you motivate, that's how you accomplish big things. He's going to say that we are in a brink of a complete change in what autonomy, what the cars mean. And we're going to, in order to get there, we need to do a complete reorganization. We're going to be AI first. We're going to be robotics first. We're going to focus on service as a business, subscription as a business, that kind of business model. Everything's going to change. Didn't he just earlier today, Sawyer, didn't he talk about the sales and how you buy cars through the system is going to change that, just become too bulky, too bloated. He's for him to know that and be aware of that and wanting to change that. I think that's impressive for a CEO to care about the experience of a customer going through the system and just even knowing that it's bloated, the process of buying a car through Tesla. And I think, didn't you also say that for just a few minutes, this new 9.99% financing popped up and then it disappeared again? And then the inventory cars have been removed. They're, maybe these are small signals that the way that they're going to sell a car and how you buy a car might completely change as well. Any thoughts on that, Sawyer, or anybody else?
Yeah, no, not much. I'd actually be curious to get your thoughts, Jeff, on Tesla removing those inventory discounts and then Elon saying, where's his quote? He said, "We are simplifying and streamlining the whole Tesla sales and delivery system. It has become complex and inefficient." What's your take on that?
Yeah, I've said this actually it's a great question, from day one. When Tesla did the first major price cuts, I think it was January 12th of 2023, and everybody's like, we're like waking up January 13th, like, are the orders going to go through the roof? And I'm like, no, because like 0.05% of the people actually know about it. And that's the problem when you do all these they did these big price changes, and we know that there was very limited awareness because they were doing no advertising back then when they did the big price cuts in the first half of last year. And then the second half of last year, everybody's still complaining about price cuts, but they were so small, there were hundreds of dollars. And like there's no general public awareness, and it's not going to really move the needle. But I understand what Tesla was doing. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't to get, major, knock-on effects in sales. It's almost like, hey, we're just going to bring the price down of these vehicles so at an average transaction price level, like these things are going to be comparable with ICE, but with much better feature value per dollar. So what I see what Elon's saying here is like, there's very little sensitivity from them going into the system and knocking a price up or down at $500 or $1,000 and in sales. And therefore, with that in mind, we're not going to do that anymore because it's not having the effect. It's very confusing. Like, I ordered the car, it was at this level. I'm taking delivery, it's at this level. Can I get this pricing now that it's at this level? Or if someone like me, I took delivery of a Model X in the end of August last year, and the next week it was $20,000 cheaper. And I'm like, what do you do for a long-term customer here? And they're like, here's the middle finger. That's what we do. So it doesn't. It's confusing. I agree with him, and it's little effect. So if there is a play to go in and say, like, when you go buy a Tesla and you do financing, and we can knock the financing rates down. And if everybody else is doing that, or if others are doing that, and it's a competitive thing, then we probably should be doing it. Or if others aren't doing it, it's possibly something that can go in and help the affordability of the vehicle, because people aren't looking so much at is it 49,980? They're looking at their monthly payment. So that's why I think that whole thing was a little bit flawed, of like just going in and tweaking these things up and down. In some countries, it's different. In some countries, they've got a tremendous like social media kind of viral thing where something happens and everybody's connected to social media and they see it right away, like in China. But in countries like the U.S. and greater parts of Europe, the awareness of it was really limited. So that's my thought. I was just going to go back to Herbert and Nicholas. I agree that like Tesla shouldn't be doing product announcements in an earnings call, and nor will they. But they're also probably not going to walk through like the strategy of the company necessarily on an earnings call either. Like, we're a robotics AI company, but at some point, it's not necessarily 8.8 announcement. I mean, at some point they've got to like articulate their like how they're doing this transition. And again, not by doing a product announcement. I don't want to understand the contours of the robotaxi or the finishes on the metal. Like, I don't want to understand that. But as an investor, I think what Machine's point is, I agree with it too, is like at some point investors want to figure out how this company is making this transition.
But
Otherwise,
Jeff,
they're not going to put money next to it.
Earnings calls next week, he needs to explain a little bit more color than what he's said so far about why he did this massive reorganization.
Yeah.
So
and he will have
that's
questions. There will be questions from both the investors and the analysts to that. He will have to
Honestly,
answer to that.
realistically, don't expect much.
Well, we'll see. I just want to get back to the financing point, Jeff, because you're right. Do remember Tesla for a while.
I'm more curious if Tom's going to speak more on the call, given that Drew's not there.
Hey, Ted, I'm sorry, Alexander was speaking. Please don't interrupt. Thanks.
No problem. I
I
just
didn't
want to
hear
get.
anything. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
no problem. Must be a technical issue. Don't worry. So I just wanted to get back to the financing. So Tesla doesn't have a financing branch, right? So it's not like the Fords or the Toyotas or whatever that they have their own bank that can offer the financing. So for them, if they're giving a cheaper financing than the market, somebody has to take the hit. I mean, it's not going to be the bank. The bank is not going to give Tesla clients preferred rates. So Tesla has to. So discount is actually going to be part of the financing deal, or Tesla will accept to put the financing on its books. So that I just want to recall that. So about 18 months ago, they started having some consumer financings on their book, deals up to 5, 6, 7 years out, and then they slowly melted those down. And they're still on the books, but they're obviously coming to maturity 1 year at a time, and then they stopped increasing those about 4 months ago when we had the last. Well, actually in January we had the last numbers, but it looked as if they stopped increasing that during Q4 2023. Now, if they come out with a 0.99% financing, that screenshot that circulates since yesterday that was available for a couple of minutes on the Tesla website, it is obviously a competitive market. And if you have that car dealership guy post from yesterday where he had the best 0% deals right now and had 17 cars lined up from the realcartips.com website, which all have a 0% financing offer for 5 to 6 years. And of those 17 cars, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 of the 17 are electric. So there is the Toyota BZ4X, there's the Ford Mach-E, there are the 2 Kias, there's the Lexus, there's the Nissan, there's the Subaru, and another Hyundai Iconiq 5. All of those have 0% financing deals currently available. So you're completely right, Jeff. This is a competitive market. People argue with monthly payments. If they have these cars that are more expensive than the Model 3 and more expensive than the Model Y, but at a 0% financing, Tesla's response, rather than just lowering the price all the time, could very well be the 0.99 offer, and then I think they will put them on their own books rather than adding money to the banks.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, over 80% of people finance their vehicles, and the loan. I looked at the loan. I think the New York Fed publishes the loan rejection rate. I think they've only been measuring it for a decade, but I think we're at a decade high in terms of loan rejection rates. So it's a problem. I think it was around 16%. It's like it's 1 in 6 people that go apply for a loan for a car. It's an auto loan rejection rate. 1 in 6 people, I think, were getting rejected. That's a lot. That's 1 in 6 people that want to buy a Tesla or any kind of car, but 1 in 6 Tesla buyers that apply get rejected. And so, yeah, if there's something that can be done here to make vehicles more affordable without playing this this pricing game, which again there's real lack of awareness on it. I think it'll go a long way.
Okay, let's bring up some more folks here. We got Rich. Rich, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. Listen, Herbert, I listened to your interview with Brian Wang today, and I think you touched on it. And I'm wondering if anybody's here spoken about it or thought this through. Are we missing something where Elon's going to be able to monetize the data centers and not spend $10 billion this year and who knows what next year until robotaxi is going to start bringing in major money, but for the take rate rising? the way he's been able to monetize SpaceX to be able to take cargo and then pay for Starlink, and the way FSD was being paid for by people being buying into the beta. I'm just thinking maybe there's something missing here for the amount of money he's pouring into this, where he's going to be able to monetize this and make it work instead of just throwing so much money at this, and robotaxi is going to have to come and save the day much sooner than maybe is realistic.
Anybody want to address that?
I didn't listen yet.
Yeah.
I didn't listen yet, Herbert.
Yeah, no, I like the way you're thinking, because that's the beauty and that's just a brilliance of Tesla as always, right? No other company actually charges their customers to use full self-driving to train the car to be able to implement robotaxi. How did they even think of that instead of the other way around, right? And so in this case, you're saying that because they've invested so much in data warehouse, why are we thinking that that's just going to be expense? He would find a way to do this. The interview I did with Brian Wang was a very good one. Brian shared, he pieced together a lot of data and lots of information that he got about communication that not only Elon, but others have talked about Tesla buying NVIDIA chips. And basically, he's now able to show that Tesla's way past the 100 exaflops that they were thinking that they would have by the end of this year, and even more so. So, this idea that they're going to have data warehouses, that they're going to build data warehouses, that people will pay them to build data warehouses, and that there was that job posting. Remember, Alexander, wasn't it you that found that out? That there was a job posting for a new person to build a one-of-a-kind data warehouse. And it was a factory engineer. Well, what does this all mean, right? So maybe it's a data warehouse that's connected to a megapack factory that's connected to solar panels. It's not just a normal mega data warehouse that others are doing. Amazon bought a data warehouse that's right on the same vicinity as a nuclear power plant. This is what they need to do now.
I think the other thing that people need to realize is Tesla's doing is laying the foundation basically for compute and data, so that when they flip up Optimus, the infrastructure is there to support the relatively rapid learning it's going to have. And to the other question about monetizing the data warehouses and data centers, it they won't like how should I say it, like host like an AWS or something like that. But indirectly, when FSD proves its worth and value to other third-party automakers and licensing is going to be required, that's how it's going to provide cash flow. So basically, it goes to the point of like they want to remove the future hurdle of having enough compute, because ultimately what's going to happen is when the third parties join and license FSD, the system's going to need to account for way more form factors and sizes and that much more data. And that's what we're seeing with the launch of version 12, that there's an exponential graph in terms of miles driven.
Machine? We can't hear you, Machine. Okay.
I think he's connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, while we just want to intercept something that you said earlier about the job postings. At the moment, there are no job postings up there. My theory is that while these layoffs are taking place, they took everything down, not to be in any breach of any legal situations, and that we'll have to wait a couple of days before they're back up.
So far, what I've been hearing from folks is that most of the people in the panel here don't think that Elon's necessarily going all in on robotaxi. You guys seem to think that they're still going to be creating the compact car at the same time.
Well, I don't like this history of all in. Robotaxi is a business model. That doesn't mean that there's no other cars developed or whatever. It's the people have to, I have the feeling we're having a language issue now. All in on the robotaxi can be simultaneously happening while they're still developing this unboxed model compact car. So I just want to, caution everybody to think that robotaxi is a car and everything else won't exist afterwards. Everything else is continuing to exist, be it energy, be it development of new cars, being production of current cars, being current cars eligible to join the robotaxi network. There's just so much more happening. Don't even talk about the bot. So this Elon is now all in robotaxi. Well, Elon is all focused that Tesla's margin are going to be the highest possible. He's been talking about this for at least 5 years because the robotaxi margins are going to be software as a service margin. So that's where we're getting to these 80% margins rather than being around these 15% margins. But that doesn't mean, it's not because you have your business model laid to progress in that direction that the other stuff, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but will those margins come in time in the next 2 or 3 years?
Oh, nobody has a crystal ball to know. I mean, we all have learned to live with Elon's timetables being late, right? Merely late, but still doing the impossible. So, I mean, you know how optimistic I am. I still think the robotaxi business model will be implemented before the year end with current cars. But, when the robotaxi dedicated car will be out, I have no idea. How much of that will be produced rather than customer sales of a compact car, I have no idea. And we're getting into speculations that I'm not even sure make any sense. It's just, if you don't have the stomach to sit out the next 2 or 3 years, which are going to be choppy because people will pretend they don't understand what's happening, it may not go as quick as you want, don't be in this stock. I mean, I've been saying this now for years. Please don't be in this stock if you can't stomach it. Please don't do margin if you don't know what you're doing. Please don't do options if you can't take the loss. This is a stock where you have to have patience because timing it is just close to impossible. It may be surprisingly quick or it may be continuously late, but you have to understand the basic business model and that at one point it will come to fruition and it's worth it. If you don't have the stomach for that, honestly, there's so much other stocks out there that may be easier to digest.
So on a similar point, I'm going to drop a show tomorrow with Hans, and he brought back Walter Isaacson's chapter on the $25,000 car in the robotaxi. And what I didn't know, a lot of people have been saying this in just recently, where they're saying, well, if they're going to do robotaxi, they don't need to make 20 million cars a year anymore because you only need 100,000 to service Chicago. They're going to need to make much less. In fact, that's not the case because here's the paragraph. They start this way. They go, they decided that the robotaxi would be a smaller, less expensive, less speedy car than the Model 3. Our main focus has to be volume, Musk said. There is no amount that we could possibly build that will be enough. Someday we want to be at 20 million a year. And he's referring to robotaxi. And so even with robotaxi, he's thinking big. I mean, what people were saying, they don't need to make 20 million. That's not the case. He still wants to make 20 million a year for robotaxi.
Well, that's a good conversation. That to me, if they're going to discuss the context of switching to a new business model, that's the question to ask. Because on one hand, you're claiming that utilization of vehicles is sub 10%, and you're going to create a robotaxi that's going to 5 or 10x that. So if you're going to 5 or 10x utilization, why do you need so many vehicles? And I'd love to hear the answer. If the answer is people are going to be using these things, at a greater frequency because of X, Y, or Z, then I'd love to understand why they're thinking that way. That would be important.
Let me ask a question to the panel here. Do you guys think that there's a thing, an animal such as a normal car, but you just remove the steering wheel and brakes, and it's a robotaxi? So my answer is no, right? Because Elon very specifically said, I want a robotaxi designed first for robotaxi. So you're going to either have a robotaxi or you're going to have a Model 3, Model Y car. I don't think that they're going to create a car with just remove the steering wheel and brakes and call it and have that as the middle ground solution. Who here thinks that that could be the case, that they will create that version as well?
Well, it may be a semantics issue, Herbert. It may be that Elon believes that the quote unquote compromised vehicle, that where you just remove these things, isn't the end all be all, but they still may enable that. But the end all be all may be something that, there's multiple screens inside of the vehicle, like there's some sort of use, like the chairs swivel, like you actually start getting some sort of like, usefulness out of having the robotaxi form factor. So they could be doing, like, there could be an option for both. I mean, if you think about it, Alexandra believes, like, existing cars are going to be enabled. I believe to some extent too. So you have that. So now you have an existing vehicle with a steering wheel, like, and it gets enabled. Why wouldn't you have this transitional period of, you've built a modular platform? Why wouldn't you late stage postpone, how you see demand? And if you see demand shifting for more robo taxis or more driver, assist vehicles, that you could switch back and forth very easily in the factory. Why wouldn't you have that? And then finally, why wouldn't you be making vans and smaller vehicles that are just that they're just robo taxi only? So I could see more of a kind of all of the above, but at various points in time as they're doing this transition.
Right. And in fact, Elon's brother Kimball was interviewed, and he was saying that that's why they made the steering wheel half the size, right? The yoke to be the different version so that you can push it in if you needed to, that they've already been thinking this way.
Yeah.
Nicholas, did you have no? Okay, Ted?
Yeah, to answer your question, I think that's the whole point of the platform. So it's definitely the likelihood is going to happen, and I think what's going to happen on August 8th is the pretty much the main vision of steering wheel-less and pedal-less vehicle will be presented, but then they'll showcase modularity, and I think that's going to really scale down as regulation catches up. And what I mean by that is we're probably gonna reach a point in time generationally where Tesla is going to need to prove that whatever the FSD stack is at least 10 times safer than the average human, right? And I say that it's an incredibly low bar, but there's going to be that weird transition piece, but then it's not going to be as weird as we think, if that makes sense. Mainly because of the ability for steer by wire. And I can't emphasize this enough, like that innovation is going to be one of the most important things to the manufacturing process for the future platforms.
Yeah, I agree. Good points. So we have, did you guys talk about, there's earnings in a week. You just talked about kind of the construct of the call. Nobody talked about, they expect any, big updates in terms of actual numbers, free cash flow, any conversation on earnings, or just
Not yet. That's a good topic for us to cover right now. I do think it's going to be weird, right? Without Drew's not going to be there, right? That's just the fact. That's not going to be there, right? Or is he? Because when you're a top executive and this happens to you, you're not. It's not
no,
like you're there.
He's not going on the earnings call.
He's already gone, I believe.
Yeah. So that's just not likely that he's going to be there. So who's going to be there?
Lars.
I mean, we know Tom and Lars are on the call typically.
Yeah. So Lars.
What I would like to see on this earnings call, and I think it's time to do it, is they got to focus on energy. Like they really got to like bring that out, and I'm hoping that's going to be like the bright spot in earnings.
Yeah, and there's also the supply chain leads, Karn and Roshan. They're on the call too. So if the commentary if you hear commentary beyond Elon and it's smart, it's usually going to be from Lars, Karn, or Roshan.
And I hope the CFO steps up too.
Yeah.
I
So
forget his name. Sorry.
Jeff. So I was saying that Jeff, he needs to address what happened. This happened. This the massive, the 10% layoff, the executive shuffle, this whole concept of an organizational restructure. Do you think that he can just simply say, every year we need to do some streamlining? That's fine, but that's not what this is. This isn't just streamlining. This is a complete overhaul. And he needs to explain why. He'll probably say that we're moving towards a AI-driven company, right? A company that's focused more on energy and robotaxi and robotics, and this requires different skill sets or different emphasis. We're maturing to get to that next phase of growth. Doesn't he have to tell us what that next phase of growth is? Because if it was simply the compact car, then you'll say, yeah, we need to build more gigafactories. We need to build that. But that seems to be not that's not the language. That's not the story. That's not the strategy that he's going to articulate.
So I think he's going to very simply go back a couple earnings calls and reiterate their focus on overall operating margins. And I think he'll probably tease like a AI day again to flesh out plans. I'm actually gonna hop off soon, but I think one more thing people are forgetting is I have a feeling they're going to introduce the Model 3 Plaid in the shareholder deck, similar to what they did with the SNX refresh. Thank you everybody for your time.
Yeah, Jeff? Okay, did we lose you also, Jeff? Oh, we lost Nicholas. Kept getting back again. I think that we have a spaces issue because even Alexandra had to jump off and jump back in, and she's having issues with the speaker. Nicholas, are you back? Okay, Xander, are you back? Am I all alone up here? Xander, Jeff, Nicholas, Matthew, you guys, you hear me?
You lost Jeff, but you gained a Xander.
Okay, Xander. We were talking about the earnings call. Any thoughts or consideration of what he might say, what Elon and Tesla might talk about? Addressing the reorganization, what they need to do to focus again to really, get to that next phase.
Oh man, you're gonna hate my answer. No, I have no idea what they're going to say, but I think that they will do what's necessary. It's really good to see Elon driver's seat. I think he's taking seriously. 18-year vet. That kind of thing that happens. I imagine it's not a surprise. I mean, it is a surprise by the sounds of things, and that means that you like you said, calling the space a wartime CEO. It means you have to step in and start doing what you need to do. But at the same time, with that said, I think when you make cuts and some of the people don't like it, like I was thinking, why would Rohan leave? And I don't know if it was stated, but it's possible that there's political differences and people don't like to see jobs cut if they don't they believe in that kind of a thing. But I think it's necessary for business people to do the right thing for the business, whether the optics are enjoyed or not.
Okay. Do you guys think that, that there's merit to this argument that some people are saying that, as this company is transitioning to an AI company, that Elon's now rewarding the AI, the teams that there's, they're restructuring who's paid and how much they're paid and how much their performance bonuses. And that's where maybe that the people that were running the manufacturing firms, they're getting upset because this complete change. And that's what he means by complete reorganization. We need to emphasize the AI part of this whole thing. Do you think that would he actually even address that in the earnings call? Did we lose you, Jeff? Nicholas, are you back?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it's a miracle. Sorry, I was more focused on if you could hear me. What was the question again?
Yeah, I was just talking about that. There's some people saying that AIs, it's where the new direction is going to be, and that there was hints that people who have developers are getting paid a lot more, and then the people that were running the manufacturing are and this is called conjecture on this part of mine, but they're being reshuffled to that the more important people, the more important division is going to be AI, and that's where the money's going to be spent.
No, I'm of the belief that the way the company, so not to get philosophical here, but you've seen technology go from evolution of everything's about the.
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you because I think just right now I think just right now Elon posted, right? So Omar said Elon's betting the company on autonomy. Has he lost his mind? What do you expect from a guy who bet his car company on electrification in 2003? Elon responded saying, not quite betting the company, but going balls to the wall for autonomy is a blindingly obvious move. Everything else is like variations on a horse carriage. All right. So, okay. We've got confirmation. Yeah. This is all in autonomy. All in autonomy, guys.
So that is nothing new. I take you back to a year and a half ago now, where Kilowatts went to, and I think Silicon Valley Tesla Owners Club went to Giga Texas, and Elon said it's 100 or 0, or however he said it, about autonomy, about FSD. It's the valuation of the company, right? So this is nothing new. I think the only thing that's new is that he has line of sight now. He can see it, and it's right there. It's within grasp, and it's like LeBron James in the last 2 minutes of a game, or Michael Jordan, or whatever analogy you want to use. You see it, it's there, it's for the taking, it's just yours to go get it. And I think right now he's saying, all right, it's time to double down. Now, to your point before about, are they, kind of just putting everything over to just the AI team? I don't think Tesla's that kind of company. We've seen the evolution of tech go from it's all about the hardware to over-indexing that's all about the software. And you've seen Tesla as a company really eloquently and beautifully put the priority on good hardware with great software running on top of the hardware, right? It's a balancing act. One is not going to be great without the other. They complement each other. And so beautiful, well-designed hardware needs great, beautiful, efficient, easy-to-use, intuitive software. And so it's this balance between both. Now, the vehicles have come a long way. It's all about manufacturing. That is the product at the end of the day. But right now, we're at a point where now we have a chance to level up the software. I'm also of the mindset that, we will have a dedicated built robotaxi. I don't think all they're doing is creating a robotaxi or a Gen 2 car or next gen car, whatever you want to call it, that has a steering wheel. We pop out the steering wheel and we say, hey, there's your robotaxi. I'm not in that camp. I genuinely think that they are going to build a beautiful, sleek robotaxi, something that's very efficient, very modest, yet modern, just like all their car designs are. And, you can just see everything that Franz has said about it. And it's a reason to be excited. And I think that's where they're at right now. What we read in that book was dated the second it was written, because things have changed so fast. And what we read in that book was right maybe in that moment when Walter Isaacson interviewed someone or spoke to someone, but even that moment when he got that information, things probably changed. Even Isaacson said that he was writing the last parts of the book all the way to the very end of it being published. And so there's no reason for us to think that they're in that time, with as fast as we're seeing these 12 dot releases come out, these decisions are probably happening even quicker internally as they see results and progress, and that's leading them to pivot on their strategy. And now it's very evident to the team, and not just Elon, right? We see what Shock's tweeting, we see what everyone else is tweeting or posting, that it's very apparent where they need to go and where they need to, quote unquote, make their bets. And famous phrase, don't bet against Elon. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, this is good. So his quote, this is Elon just now saying, not quite betting the company. So that is important. That's an important part of it. He's not quite betting the company, but going balls to the wall for autonomy is a blindingly obvious move. Everything else, like variations on a horse carriage. So autonomy is not quite fixed yet, but he sees the end. He's going to go. Let's get the whole company just going crazy to make sure that thing succeeds. But it's not disruptive enough that it's going to be betting the whole company. So Alexandra and Jeff, what's your thoughts when you saw this particular tweet?
I feel really reassured. Remember, I told you a couple of, at the beginning of this call, that first, it's not only robotaxis. Second, it's the only way to go, and the quicker the better, because that's the mode. And I just added a tweet with a thought that I had earlier in this call as well. You know, it is really absurd. For 5 years that I'm following this company, everybody is telling me all the time, Elon is late, Elon is late, Elon is late. And now these same people are telling us, no, he's too early. He should do the conventional thing. I mean, if you're in Tesla thinking this is a conventional company, please, please leave. Please, please, please leave. Because it's just not. That's not the way it works. The window is now. We have seen it in August. I mean, I don't know how many times we all watched that video. It's improved since. You've got it on your car now if you're a Tesla owner. The window is now. It's the obvious thing to do. You cannot let this window leave. You're not going to sit on this and wait whether in 2 years the car is ready or not. The technology is.
Yeah, they got to go. And it's a question of how do you Tesla, one of Tesla does a really good job of inventing technology that no one else could have done. That's really hard. What they don't do a good job of is telling that story. And this is going to be one of those things where they're going to have to tell a story, or I mean, you're just going to deal with just major drawdowns. In the stock, because they just let like whatever happens, like however many cars we sell. I don't have a crystal ball, all that stuff. You're gonna just you're not going to attract enough of those kind of larger investors until they actually maybe they articulate like, okay, well, we're getting closer on autonomy. This is kind of what it looks like from our perspective. So that roadmap, I think, is important, and it's not going to be like here's at this point in time we're going to be here. In this point we're going to be here. It's not going to be that, but it's going to have to be something between. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't care about quarterly sales. To we're transitioning the company to a new kind of company. I just did this gigantic restructuring. And people don't think that it's actually big. It was actually big. And the reason it was actually big is it wasn't some 10%, across the board normal trimming thing. There were groups that were differentially hit, much, much larger. And this was, basically deprecating existing projects that they deemed lower priority. And they went after, and they're going after, they're changing like they're basically their resource construct inside of the family or inside of the company. So yeah, I mean, this is the time. I like the fact he said we're not necessarily betting the company, which means like, yeah, we have the number one selling electrified auto portfolio in the world, fully electric auto portfolio in the world. Now, how do we build upon that and make it better? And and how do we usher in this transition? Like how do we responsibly kind of do this transition? I'm sure we're gonna break some glass along the way. It's not gonna be pretty, but like we're gonna be like pretty responsible. Like here, this is what we're doing on gross margins. Like, we're not doing any more of these price cuts. We're doing this, this, and this. We think our advertising, like maybe there's an update, like all the ads they've run have they generated any meaningful insights or any meaningful improvement in engagement. So we'll have to see. I go back to like the last quarter, everybody's like terrible quarter, bad quarter, don't talk about it. Don't say anything about it. Like, well, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, it was a bad number. But what if they could have built the 55 to 60,000 Model 3s they normally do in North America? And that was an execution issue on their part, by the way. But what if they would have done that? Okay, well now the number's closer to 420. Well, what if they didn't have to reroute all these ships? Well, what would the number have been then? And then so forth and so forth. And then, well, maybe you're not that far off. You're closer to, you're a little bit closer in, and maybe it's not as bad as like in doom and gloom as everybody's thinking. But there's definitely, this is definitely a precarious time. It's definitely a white knuckle time. I agree with that terminology. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything, but at the same time, you have to kind of like peel the covers back and look like one layer deep at like what's really going on versus just like I only read top line numbers and they expected this many cars and they shipped this many, and the fact that there's more cars in inventory means that they've got a demand problem. Like, well, no, yes, there's multiple root causes for things. You have to sit down and analyze it. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox, but I'm a co-host. I can do that. Nick.
Thanks. I like hearing you do your fake cry.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a real cry.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, because I have to go in a second here, but it's almost it'd almost be ironic or just hilarious if I don't think Elon's gonna say anything different on this next earnings call. And every time he's been saying the same thing for I don't know how many quarters now about autonomy, about robotaxis, and every time Wall Street laughs at him, whatnot. I can almost see a day after earnings call where Elon says the same thing, but this time, oh my God, Tesla's done it. Tesla's going to come out. We got to start pricing this to our models, and headlines start to change. Like I can almost see that. I'm just trying to get ahead of it. But I just think that'd be a funny outcome. But thanks for the spaces, everybody. I got to jump to another call.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Good stuff. Hey, Omar, we're just talking about the company doing this major transition. And we talked a little bit of like, is there a framework that, Elon's going to share, where it's not like a detailed roadmap, but it's like, this is, hey, we made these changes and here's, I'm transitioning the company and here's kind of like roughly how I'm going to do it. And on 8/8, I'm going to show you everything. I don't know. What do you think they're going to usher in this transition?
Well, I thought that the tweet at the top was interesting. He said, I'm
Yeah.
not quite betting the company, but going balls to the wall for autonomy is a blindingly obvious move. So, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding here. I've heard a lot of people say, essentially, what if focusing on FSD is a mistake? What if we get to 2026 and they have the robotaxi and then they go, oh my God, FSD doesn't work. Crap, this thing doesn't have a steering wheel. What do we do? Oh my God. No, it doesn't have a steering wheel. We're screwed. Now we can't put out a vehicle. When the reality is they're building a next gen platform and an unboxed production process that they're planning to actually build multiple vehicles on the same line, right? So if you got this next gen platform, it's got steer by wire, it's got a 4680 structural pack or any battery architecture you can plug in. It's got 48 volt. It's got all this technology. And from what we understand, they're building a vehicle without controls, a compact, and also a van on the same line. So I think the risk of sort of getting into a situation where they are not able to ship the compact or something like that has been a little bit exaggerated. It kind of makes sense if you think about it. I mean, what's worse, having a robotaxi too early or having a robotaxi too late to capture the market? And I think if they get to the point where, let's say we get into 2026 and autonomy still isn't fully solved or still doesn't work perfectly, I think the compact, the van, other vehicles will be able to be produced on the same line trivially. I mean, with steer by wire, it even eliminates a lot of the components that you'd need in a traditional, physical steering system, and should make it relatively simple to make both cars with controls and without controls on the same line. So I think people probably aren't realizing how far ahead they actually are on the next gen platform. And the last earnings call, he said, look, end of 2025, start of production. They've been telling some of their suppliers June 2025, you need to be ready to start supplying parts to us. And if you listen back to the last earnings call, he said, yeah, we're quite far along on the next gen platform. We're starting production next year. A lot of people, I think, didn't really internalize this, or they're listening to this media narrative that, okay, the focus on robotaxi isn't actually a good thing. It's a mistake because they're going to end up sort of not being able to deliver the compact. But that's really, I think, a misunderstanding of what the next gen platform is.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Hunter. I've been trying to explain this. I went through this earlier on the space too, and I'm not sure I'm doing a good job of explaining like what a vehicle platform is versus a specific purpose built design vehicle, and the fact that they're really designing for late stage postponement of these decisions, both in design and in manufacturing. So instead of like walking into a Tesla factory and there's 3 dedicated Model Y lines and 2 dedicated Model 3 lines, you're going to have an unboxed square area of square footage. It's not going to necessarily be in the shape of a line. It's going to be multiple modular lines that can feed a final modular configuration, and then you can make decisions of what's going in this vehicle um, or not. But so they're building a platform at that point where it's not the construct isn't necessarily aligned. It's multiple modular assembly points that eventually can converge on an area that builds a van, that builds a compact car, builds a robotaxi. But I think that concept, I think this is where Tesla's probably getting to the point where, like, why do we keep revealing all the shit we're doing like a year or year and a half advance of like doing it, and then everybody just tries to copy it? Like, why the f are we doing that? I wouldn't do it. So, maybe they don't have to tell us everything, but as long as they say like we're doing a platform, because and it's the other thing. My advice for people is when you have a question about this stuff, talk to people that are in product or have done product before. Don't talk to bankers or analysts on CNBC or financial analysts and ask them product questions, because you're going to get one like really fucked up response. Same thing if you start asking like product questions, like Wall Street questions. So like, I mean, we can all like try to pull something out of our ass, but it's ultimately, there's certain people I think that are better qualified to give answers on things than others. So yeah, very nuanced thing. And in your, I love the way he responded to your tweet, which is like, or your post, which is, you know, it's obvious that we have to do this, but we're not like screwing the company if like there's redundancy in place. And I think there's redundancy back to your point. It's in their approach to the next generation platform is how they're actually building this redundancy in. But there's no like getting back to like 30-40% auto margins without this added SaaS revenue and this different approach to just vehicles. So anyway, those are my thoughts. It'd be great if like on the earnings call he like starts that conversation, um, and then says like, we're going to pick this up literally after the next earnings call. It's really going to be a few weeks after the next earnings call where they're going to reveal the taxi. It's that close, or the robotaxi concept. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and if you kind of listen to what they've said, look, we think this is a revolution. We've come up with these motors. They don't use rare earths. We've come up with this new battery technology. We can put any battery in there. We come up with steer by wire and all this technology. I mean, imagine a platform for a smaller car, half the size of the 3 and Y. It needs less battery capacity to go the same range. And it's got things like steer by wire. So imagine that in a 25K car. Now, it's kind of, the discussion has really been colored by this Reuters article, right? The day Elon announced the first vehicle unveil on the Unboxed platform, they say, oh, they've canceled the 25K car. He says they're lying. But even after he says they're lying, people are still believing that it's canceled, even though I don't think that's really the case at all. If you think about sort of the go to market strategy, it might make sense to start with a vehicle that's not the compact, but then be able to produce the compact on the same line. This would allow them to ramp up and reach some volume, producing a robotaxi vehicle or a van vehicle, and then allow them to start producing the 25K car once they hit some volume. So I think they're planning to do about 10,000 vehicles a week out of Austin, but they're also going to have a facility in Berlin, have a facility in Shanghai, and produce cars there as well. So I think it's a little bit of a risk with the unbox process. It's new, it hasn't been tried before. But if it works out well and you believe them, it's going to basically change the company and the way they do manufacturing. If they've got a platform that's half the cost and allows them to make multiple different vehicles on the same line, well, then that's a complete game changer. And they can do it in a modular way without building a whole new line. Because you think about Tesla today, they've had one hit mass market product, really, the Model 3 and Y, the best selling EV in the world. And everybody loved it. But this is just two types of cars, right? Sedan and a crossover. So then you have the Cybertruck, for example. They've taken the Tesla formula, they've applied it to a truck. It's amazing. It's their best product yet. So really, all they need to do to get a lot of growth is take the Tesla formula that works, the software, the autopilot, the software updates, the FSD, all that great Tesla stuff, the supercharging, and just apply it to other form factors. Do a compact, do a van, do a vehicle without controls, do whatever else you need to do. I think they said maybe about 10 different models we need. And you'll then tap into those segments. Truck buyers will now have a Tesla option. Van buyers will now have a Tesla option. Compact buyers will have a Tesla option. And I think they could potentially get to a point where they're making millions of units on this unboxed process, more than sexy vehicles and Cybertruck combined.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we can almost there'd be a whole show on this. Like um, there are the corollaries to unboxed, and like even in the consumer electronics world, of doing this type of assembly. The key thing that they're focused on is they're focused on part elimination and reducing total process time. That's where the money's going to come in. The flexibility is going to come in with the unbox process as well. But they're focused on. I believe they're focused on like removing stuff like paint, and they're focused on with this kind of LAN network inside of the car that just further reductions in copper, just further deletion. So they're going to have to walk down this bill of material path, where they have a bomb today, in total unit economics that are like $33,000, maybe $30,000 to build their lowest cost vehicle, and they're going to have to walk that down to $18,000. And some of that you can get via like the transitions they're doing 48 volt, removing the copper and so forth. And some of it's going to be through physics, but it is actually more difficult to get higher gross margins the lower the mass and total volume of the product that you're shipping. That's why like these big, truck manufacturing in the US, these guys make crazy margins is just on the size and mass of these vehicles. They could actually make them a lot more efficiently. But yeah, the Unboxed is really going for process time and flexibility. And when they get that process time down, that's where the magic comes in. The other thing they're really focused on with Unboxed is reducing the square footage required to do the entire vehicle. So you have greater output per square meter, you have greater fixed cost leverage in the factory. So yeah. it, they're on a great path. Like this is like if you're looking at like a technology company that's building like a major piece of hardware that's used in society, and like are they physically set up, and are they mentally equipped, and are they organized in a way? That's what Elon's doing with the destruction. Are they organized to focus and execute? How could you pick a better company to execute on this than Tesla and their approach? I would be
That's so
concerned. Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Sorry,
that.
Alexander.
No, I don't see you, so I'm sorry. I didn't realize you weren't finished.
I'm
But
done.
that's so true. I mean, don't forget, just a month ago, Apple gave up on the car,
This is my
right?
favorite joke.
Now,
Oh, sorry, I'm
now
interrupting.
Apple gave up.
Yeah, and that model of using a contract manufacturer, which is, by the way, it inserts a, a margin wedge. It's another line item in unit economics that Tesla doesn't have, which is paying somebody a margin to do work. Um, yeah, it's difficult to do. It's difficult to enter. There's a high barrier of entry to enter in auto. You really can't just say, I'm gonna go to Magna, like Fisker. I'm gonna go to Magna, and I'm gonna give them a design. Everyone's gonna love it, and we're gonna build it, and Magna's gonna do it, and they're great because they build a lot of cars. Well, guess what? Magna wants to make effing money, and Magna wants scale, and if you don't give them scale, they're not. I mean, they have scale from their other business, but it's not. Everybody thinks like if you make a bunch of cars, your costs go down. If you make a bunch of cars on a small number of SKUs, your cost structure goes down. If you're GM and you've got or Stellantis and you say you want to do 50 SKUs, you're not going to get the kind of cost structure. Now, are they doing well in gross margin right now? I mean, they're I think upper teens. If we want to like throw a parade for that, we'll throw a parade. I know people like to put comparative charts because Tesla's dipped. Um, but I think Tesla's going for a completely different paradigm. And between what they're doing in Unbox when it's ramped and what they're doing with the SaaS side of it, I mean, it'll be a different auto gross margin paradigm a couple of years from now, I believe. But again, it's going to take them a bit of time to get to it. They're not going to turn on Unboxed and be profitable day one. Like anything, when you're bringing up new capex, it's running at lower speeds, lower process times. Any operators that are still there, everything's moving slower. But a year from starting that up, it'll be very interesting to see what auto gross margins look like with an Unboxed manufacturing model and a SaaS business robotaxi.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. It really makes sense possibly to start with the highest value vehicle. Like you think about the Cybertruck, they did the Foundation series. It's $100,000. That helped them ramp Cybertruck with minimal impact. So starting with the higher value vehicle while they ramp, I think makes a lot of sense. Because the defining feature of the compact, which is going to be smaller than the 3Y, is that it's $25,000. So would it make sense to have the first few compacts that come off the line be $50,000 and actually be more than the 3 and Y? I don't really think so. So the strategy seems less crazy, I think, when you work on it. I think a lot of people think these guys are sitting on their hands. They're not. I think, if you've listened to what they've said about the unbox process, they want to reinvent how you make a car. And then, just going back to the tweet at the top again that Elon responded to of mine, where I said, "Is Elon is betting the company on autonomy? Has he lost his mind?" What do you expect from a guy who bet his car company on electrification in 2003? And this is kind of what the guy does. He's good at figuring out what the future is, and then he bets the company on that. People forget now, with the world we live in today, the post-Tesla Model 3 world. But back in 2018, a profitable mass market electric car was more rare than a robotaxi. Okay? In 2018, Waymo started offering robotaxi rides in Arizona. And in 2018, there was no profitable electric vehicle in the world. Since then, everything has obviously changed. So if you asked everyone in this room, everyone would probably agree that, yes, okay, in the future, probably all cars will be self-driving. Everyone will use self-driving cars. Yet people are afraid to actually go and do it and build it themselves. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? Right? I estimate that we need 120 million robotaxis to replace the world's transport demand in whatever form, trucks, vans, cars, whatever. So we really need to make a shit ton of these things. Somebody needs to make a shit ton of these things. Tesla needs to essentially 10x their production from around 2 million a year today to somewhere on the order of 20 million cars. And I think the unbox process is sort of their answer to that. So I think people are a little too skeptical, honestly. I was sitting in a driverless Waymo yesterday and I was reading X and I saw somebody say, what if Elon makes a big mistake and robotaxi isn't ready for years? And I was just thinking, I'm in a fucking robotaxi right now. And people are still saying, well, what if it doesn't work for years? You're seeing FSD 12 take off. You're seeing Grok get vision capabilities that I think are incredibly powerful and incredibly useful for self-driving. I think it would almost be foolish not to be focusing intensely on robotaxis. If they are able to build the first mass market autonomous vehicle, then the company will be worth 10 times more than it is today. If they can't deliver on autonomy, then I think the stock could easily lose 60 to 80% of its value. So there's really no other choice but to, as he said, not go quite balls to the wall, but not quite bet the company, but go balls to the wall for autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people sometimes forget. That is the grander scheme, but I mean, they haven't kind
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.